My name is Rowan Ellery, and I'm 29 years old. If you asked my stepmother, she'd tell you I have serious issues, that I'm damaged, that my real mom abandoned me, that any man who dates me should be warned ahead of time, like I come with fine print side effects. She's not totally wrong about the issues part. I do have them. They just don't look the way she describes. My mom didn't abandon me. She died. Breast cancer. 2 years of slow, merciless erosion. I was there for all of it. Chemo appointments, the hair in the drain, the way her handwriting shrank on the sticky notes she left around the house so I wouldn't forget when to take my own vitamins. I was 14 when she died. That's the trauma that shaped me, not some story about her packing a suitcase and walking out. The abandonment version belongs to my stepmother. That's her favorite lie. For 12 years, she has taken my history and rearranged it like furniture, dragging it into whatever configuration best suits her mood and her audience. And for 12 years, every boyfriend I brought home somehow ended up gone within a few months, spooked by something she said, some concern she whispered after dessert, too clingy, too aloof, too ambitious, not ambitious enough. I spent my early 20s convinced I was just bad at picking men. Turns out I was wrong about that. Just not in the way I thought. The night everything finally snapped started like so many others. Family dinner at my dad's house. Dad was at the grill, out on the back patio, fussing over burgers like they were delicate medical instruments. The air smelled like charcoal and rosemary. The late sun slid across the neatly mowed grass. He still insisted on cutting himself, for the exercise, even though he was 61 and ran marathons for fun. Inside, the house looked Pinterest perfect. My stepmother's kingdom. Neutral tones, curated throw pillows, a fruit bowl that was mostly decoration. She'd spent all afternoon straightening up, which meant lighting candles and repositioning things that were already in the right place. And then there was Caleb. Caleb Foster, 30. Kind eyes, steady hands. He worked as a structural engineer, which made sense. Everything about him felt load-bearing. We'd been seeing each other for a few months, long enough that meeting my family felt like the next logical step. He'd seen pictures of Dad and heard the polite, edited summaries of my complicated history. He knew my stepmother and I weren't exactly a warm Hallmark card, but he didn't know the half of it. He stood in the kitchen in a navy button-down, sleeves rolled once at the forearm, carefully arranging the salad he'd brought into my stepmother's nice bowl, because she'd insisted. He was nervous in the way good men get nervous, wanting to make a good impression, not for his ego, but because he knew how much this mattered to me. "It's just dinner," I said, straightening his collar. "She's not a dragon, more like a snake that learned to walk upright." He huffed a quiet laugh. "That's very reassuring, Rowan." "Dad loves you already," I added. "He's excited you know the difference between a torque wrench and a paperweight." "Engineers unite," he joked, but his eyes searched mine. "And your stepmom?" I swallowed. The kitchen clock ticked too loudly. "Just don't take anything she says about me at face value, okay? If something feels weird, ask me later." He nodded slowly. "Got it. I'm on your side." Those words lodged in my chest, like a promise I was afraid to believe. Dad called from the patio. "Rowan, come help me flip these before your stepmother complains they're too rustic again." I squeezed Caleb's hand once and went outside. The screen door creaked shut behind me. For a few minutes, it was ordinary. My dad and I stood over the grill, the heat licking our faces, talking about the machine shop, new contracts, his plan to finally update his will so things would be simple if anything ever happened to him. He mentioned splitting his share of the business between me and my stepbrother Jonah. 50-50, he said, almost casually. "Seems fair, right?" I remember the way something in my stomach twisted. Not because it seemed unfair, but because, in that moment, I could almost feel my stepmother's future rage, like the low rumble before a storm. "Yeah," I said, "it does." We chatted another minute. Then we carried the platter of burgers back inside. The air in the dining room felt wrong. Not smoky or hot. Just shifted, like someone had moved the gravity 2 inches to the left. Caleb stood near the table, hands loose at his sides, his face a careful blank he only wore when he was trying very hard not to show emotion. My stepmother leaned against the counter with her arms crossed, her expression satisfied in a way I recognized too well. "Everything good?" I asked, forcing lightness into my voice. "Oh yes," she said first, before Caleb could answer. "We had a nice chat. Just some things he should probably know about you." My stomach dropped. Caleb cleared his throat. Your stepmom was telling me about your mom. Of course she was. I just think honesty is important in relationships, my stepmother continued, turning the full force of her faux concerned gaze on Caleb. She should know your mother abandoned you when you were a teenager. That kind of trauma leaves lasting damage. Attachment issues, trust problems, emotional unavailability. It better he knows now what he's getting into than waste his time. The room went quiet. Even the fridge hum sounded accusatory. I stared at her. You told him my mom abandoned me? She shrugged, lips pursed. That's essentially what happened. She left you, whether it was by choice or by cancer, I cut in. My voice came out flat and sharp. She left by cancer, remember? You were there for the funeral. Caleb's eyes flicked between us, uncertainty hardening into something closer to alarm. My stepmother tilted her head, pitying. Sweetheart, I know that's what you believe, but denial is part of grieving. Sometimes it's easier to tell yourself a parent didn't choose to leave than to admit they couldn't handle. Stop! My hand was already in my pocket, fingers closing around my phone. My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. I'd been waiting for this. I turned to Caleb. She's not wrong that I have issues, I said, meeting his eyes, but they're not the ones she's describing. His shoulders eased a fraction, like some invisible string pulled him closer to me instead of away. My mom didn't abandon me, I went on. She died when I was 14. 2 years of chemo and doctors and watching her body give up. That's the trauma. Not some fictional abandonment. This story? I jerked my chin toward my stepmother. That's her favorite lie. My stepmother's smile faltered. Just a flicker, but I saw it. This is from 2 weeks ago, I said, unlocking my phone. Her book club. Her eyes widened. Rowan, don't. I dropped off groceries and accidentally left my phone recording in the kitchen, I continued, my tone almost conversational. Total accident, of course. My thumb hit play. Her voice filled the dining room, tinny but unmistakable. This new guy seems sweet, recording her said. But give it a month. I've gotten rid of 6 already. She has no idea. Last one, I told him she had anger management issues, completely made up. But he bought it. The one before that, I mentioned she was drowning in credit card debt and borrowing money. This time, I'm thinking the abandonment story again. Works every time. Men get scared of all the emotional baggage and run. Just need to keep this up a few more years, until she gives up entirely. Then Jonah gets the full inheritance. Why should my boy have to split his father's business 50-50 with someone who isn't even mine? A murmur of background voices. A woman's voice. That seems harsh. Then my stepmother's laugh. That's called protecting my family. I stopped the recording. Nobody moved. Caleb stared at my stepmother, mouth slightly open. His knuckles were white where his hands had curled into fists. My stepmother's face had gone from smug to chalky. That's taken out of context, she said quickly. You edited that. You've always been good with computers. There's more, I said quietly, already scrolling. My fingers didn't shake. It was like every nerve had finally decided on a single path, forward. This is from a month ago, family dinner. I went to the bathroom and accidentally left my phone on the counter. I hit play. Once the will is updated and Jonah is listed as primary beneficiary, her voice floated out again, talking to her sister. I don't care what happens with her, but right now, if she gets married, everything splits evenly. Can't risk that. I stopped the recording. Caleb exhaled, a sound halfway between a curse and a prayer. What the hell, he whispered. My stepmother lunged toward me, hand outstretched. Delete those. You can't record people without their consent. It's illegal. One-party consent state, I said, stepping back so she grabbed air. I can. I need to leave, Caleb said suddenly. My stomach clenched. Here it was, the part where he ran. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at her. I'm not running from you, he said to me, voice rough. I'm running from this. He gestured around the room like the walls themselves were in on it. This insanity. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. Our eyes met for half a second. Sorrow, anger, something protective still glowing there. And then he was out the door. My stepmother whirled on me. Look what you've done, she hissed. You're destroying this family. You and those recordings. The back door opened. Dad walked in with a platter of burgers, all smiles, completely unaware. All right, who's hungry? He stopped mid-sentence, taking in Caleb's absence, my stepmother's wild-eyed fury, the phone in my hand. What's going on? He asked slowly. I looked at him, at the man who had tried so hard to keep the peace that he'd never noticed the war. Dad, I said, voice steady. Sit down. You need to hear this. My dad didn't sit so much as fold into the nearest chair, the platter of burgers lowering to the table with a soft, confused thud. His eyes flicked to the front door Caleb had walked through, then to my stepmother, who had backed herself against the kitchen island like she needed a surface to stay upright. "Someone start talking," he said. I didn't need prompting. I pressed play again. For the next 40 minutes, I laid out everything. Every recording, every whisper, every sabotage she'd executed like it was an administrative task on her to-do list. The kitchen filled with her own voice, sharp, mocking, dripping with disdain, as she detailed how she'd gotten rid of 6 men I had cared about. 6. Men who left because of lies she'd tailored like bespoke poison, anger issues, debt, clinginess, emotional volatility, and always the abandonment story. Dad's face was a slow-motion collapse, confusion, then disbelief, then heartbreak, then something worse, recognition. My stepmother kept trying to interrupt. "That was a joke. You're twisting this. I was protecting her. Context matters." Dad finally held up a hand. Not loudly, not forcefully, just final. "Stop!" She froze. He turned to me. "Play the rest." So I did. The part where she said she needed to keep this up a few more years until Rowan gives up entirely. The part where she laughed about how gullible men were. The part where she explained to her sister how getting me married would mean splitting the estate with a girl who isn't even mine. Dad's hand slid down his face, stopping at his mouth. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded scraped out. 12 years, he whispered. 12 years of this. "I only figured it out recently," I said quietly. "Before that, I thought I was the problem." My stepmother's composure finally snapped. "You're not innocent in this either," she spat. "You've always resented me, always. You want him all to yourself. You've been poisoning him against me since the day I moved in." Dad blinked at her, stunned. "What are you talking about? Rowan has never—" "Oh, please," she snapped. "You really think she just conveniently recorded all these moments? She baited me, manipulated me, edited them. She's always been jealous of Jonah." "Jealous?" I repeated, incredulous. "Of what?" "Of the fact that I'm his mother," she said, jabbing a finger at her chest. "Not your precious saint of a mom. I raised you." Something inside me went cold. "No," I said. "You maintained a household I was already running. You offered me advice I didn't ask for. You undermined me whenever it benefited Jonah, but you never raised me." Her face twisted. "Ungrateful little—" Dad slammed his palm onto the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "Enough." Silence. "I need to understand something," he said, looking at her like she was a stranger. "Have you really been sabotaging Rowan's relationships?" She crossed her arms. If they were the right men, a few words wouldn't scare them away. "That's not an answer." "I did what I had to do," she snapped. "For my family. For Jonah. You were about to hand half the business to someone who isn't even mine." There it was. The mask dropped, and the truth stood there, ugly and unvarnished. Dad looked gutted. "Rowan is my daughter. Jonah is my son. Both of them. Equally. How can you still say something like that after all these years?" My stepmother scoffed. "Blood matters." "No," he said, voice shaking with controlled fury. "Character matters." The temperature in the room shifted, just a few degrees, but enough to feel like gravity changed again. She realized then that things had flipped, that she was no longer steering the narrative, that the man who'd forgiven her sharp edges and boundary pushing for over a decade was no longer inclined to see the best in her. And she panicked. "You're really choosing her over me," her voice cracked upward. "After everything I've done for this family?" "You sabotaged her life," Dad said. "You lied about her mother. You undermined her relationships. You've been poisoning this house with your insecurity and greed." "And you," she shot back, spinning on me. "You've been recording me, spying on me, manipulating him." I lifted my phone. "If I didn't record you, nothing would change. You would still be destroying my relationships, still lying about my mother, still smiling in my face while gutting my future." She lunged toward me in a sudden burst of rage. Dad stepped between us. "Enough," he said again, his voice no longer shaking. "You're moving to the guest room." "The hell I am," she hissed. "This is my house." "I owned it before we married," he said. "Guest room, or you find somewhere else." "You can't kick me out," she shrieked. "You can't just—" The front door opened suddenly, and a new voice cut through the room. "What's going on?" my stepbrother Jonah asked, stepping inside with a reusable grocery bag in hand. He froze at the scene, the tension, the flushed faces, the vibrating silence. Dad looked at him with weary sadness. "Your mother has been lying. For a long time." Jonah turned to her. Mom? She opened her mouth, ready to spin a story, but I beat her to it. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room once again, laughing about how easily she could get rid of my boyfriends, bragging about preserving his birthright, and explaining how she just needed to keep me single until Dad updated the will. Jonah stared at his mother like he didn't recognize her. Mom, what the hell? Her face flushed crimson. Don't you dare judge me. Everything I did was for you. I never asked for that, he snapped. I never wanted you to ruin her life to help me. It wasn't ruining, she insisted. It was protecting. Jonah dropped the grocery bag. A jar of pasta sauce burst on the floor. Stop lying, he said quietly, shaking his head. You tried to control everything. You manipulated everyone. This is insane. Her expression flickered. First shock, then betrayal. You're taking her side? I'm taking the sane side, he said. You need help. That word, help, sent her spiraling. She screamed, grabbed her purse, and stormed down the hallway. A second later, the slam of the master bedroom door rattled the chandelier. Dad exhaled slowly. Jonah sank onto a chair. I leaned against the counter, every muscle trembling in delayed reaction. For a moment, the three of us just breathed. Then Jonah scrubbed his hands over his face and muttered, I'm so sorry, Rowan. I swear to God, I didn't know. I know, I said softly. It was never you. Dad rubbed his temples. What are we going to do? I looked toward the hallway, where muffled cursing drifted through the closed door. This, I said, is just the beginning. The beginning was loud, shouting, door slamming, Jonah pacing, Dad rubbing his forehead like he was trying to press back a migraine. But the days that followed were worse. Quiet, strategic, calculated. My stepmother wasn't the type to retreat. She regrouped. And she retaliated. It started on Monday. Dad changed the locks first thing that morning, on his lawyer's advice. 12 years of excuses and emotional landmines had taught him to avoid confrontation, but the recordings changed him. They hardened something, strengthened something. He texted me a picture of the new deadbolt. Done. Should have done this ages ago. By lunch, she discovered it. A notification pinged on my phone from Dad's Ring app. He'd shared access with me months ago when he started going on marathon training runs before sunrise. I opened the video and nearly dropped my fork. She was on the porch, hair wild, face twisted into a snarl I'd never seen fully unmasked. She tried her old key. Jiggle, jiggle, harder, harder, then a vicious kick to the bottom of the door. You locked me out of my own home, she screamed. Open this door right now. Another kick. Then she started crying. Big, theatrical sobs meant for an audience she no longer had. I'm the victim here. I'm the one being abused. Dad texted me 10 seconds later, saw the footage, sending it to my lawyer. But that was only phase 1. By Wednesday, she escalated. I was home folding laundry when there was a sharp knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, a police officer stood there, hand resting lightly near his belt. Are you Rowan Ellery? Yes, I said, heart lurching. We received a report from your stepmother. She claims you've been contacting her repeatedly, threatening her, harassing her. My blood went cold, then hot, then somewhere numb in between. I held up my phone. I haven't spoken to her once, not a single call or text since the dinner. Here, look. I scrolled through my message threads. Nothing from her, nothing to her. Also, I added, walking to my coffee table, she left me a voicemail 2 days ago. I hit play. Her voice filled the small apartment. You've always been jealous of my son. Always wanted your father to yourself. When he realizes what you've done, how you manipulated the situation, you'll lose everything. Everything. This isn't over, Rowan. You ruined my life. I'll ruin yours. The officer sighed. Ma'am, keep this voicemail. And if she files another false report, you can press charges. I didn't do anything to her, I said, feeling someplace raw and young open inside me. I'm just trying to get my life back. He nodded, wrote something down, and left. I didn't realize I was shaking until the door clicked shut. The reactive fear lasted only a few hours. The anger lasted days. But the worst part? Thursday. My apartment's hallway camera caught her again. 10 straight minutes of pounding on my door, her voice echoing through the corridor like something feral. I know you're in there. Tell your father the truth. Tell him you edited those recordings. You're destroying my family. I stood inside, spine pressed to the wall, every muscle tight. She wasn't just unhinged, she was cornered. That made her dangerous. After she left, I forwarded the footage to Dad and his lawyer. Evidence kept piling up without me even trying. Then, because she never knew when to stop, she went after my job. On Friday morning, my supervisor called me into his office. His expression was tight, uncomfortable. He turned his monitor toward me. An email from her, a long one, claiming I was mentally unstable, engaging in illegal surveillance, and a risk to the company culture. My stomach plunged. I felt 19 again, on the verge of crying in a bathroom stall at my first internship because she'd told me I was emotionally exhausting. "This isn't your fault," my supervisor said quickly when he saw my face, "but I do need you to explain." "I have proof," I said, handing over my phone. "Recordings, police reports, a voicemail. She's retaliating because she was exposed for 12 years of manipulation." He listened, watched the clips, read the transcript I'd typed up. When he finished, he re-angled his monitor and leaned back. "So," he said slowly, "you're dealing with a vindictive ex-stepmother." "Yes." "Got it." His shoulders relaxed. "I'll document this as harassment against you, not by you. If she contacts anyone here again, we'll forward everything to our legal team." A weight slid off my chest, heavy enough that I didn't notice how much I'd been carrying. By the time I left his office, my hands had stopped shaking. But the universe wasn't giving me a break yet. That evening, my phone buzzed. Jonah. He sounded terrified. "Rowan, Mom's planning something." I closed my laptop. "What kind of something?" "I don't know. She keeps talking about protecting what's ours. She asked me multiple times to lie for her, said you've always been volatile and angry, said she was scared of you." My laugh was sharp enough to hurt my throat. "Scared of me?" I told her no. She called me a traitor. Of course she had. "Be careful," Jonah whispered. "She's not thinking straight, and her sister is egging her on." That made my pulse stutter. Her sister was worse, meaner, smarter, and far more resentful. She'd always acted like I was a stain on her family tree. I swallowed. "Thanks for warning me." "Rowan," Jonah hesitated. "I really am sorry." "I know," I said, and I did. "None of this is you." We hung up, but his last words echoed long after. "Mom's planning something." I already knew. Something involving Dad. Something involving me. Something involving the business she thought she deserved. And I knew, with a cold certainty settling into my bones. She wasn't finished. Not even close. Her something arrived exactly 1 week later. It came in a manila envelope taped to Dad's front door, the edges curled from humidity. Jonah found it first when he got home from the shop. He sent me a picture, hands trembling so badly the photo was blurry. "Divorce petition + restraining order. Request. Filed by my stepmother. Against my father. Her claims: emotional abuse, financial abuse, fear for her safety. A script, a tactic, a nuclear option to claw back power." Dad's lawyer called him within an hour. "This is pure retaliation," the lawyer said. "We'll fight it." But another call came the same night, this one from me. Because something had been gnawing at me ever since that first dinner, the way she obsessed over the business, the machine shop, the inheritance, the desperation behind why should my boy have to split it. Desperation like that doesn't come out of nowhere. "Dad," I said, pacing my apartment, "I want to check the business financials." "You think she stole something?" he asked, though something in his voice already knew. "I think we should look," I said carefully. He exhaled. "Do it." So I did. The business's expense records weren't complicated. Dad and his brother built the shop decades ago. Loyal customers, steady contracts, very little fluff. Which is why one line item stood out like a flashing alarm. Precision Consulting Services, $2,000 month, every month, for 2 years. I sat at my desk, staring at that name, the way a person might stare at a clue in a crime show, waiting for the next puzzle piece to snap into place. "Dad," I called him again. "Who is Precision Consulting Services?" A long, heavy silence. Then, "I've never heard of them." My fingers flew across the keyboard. Business registry, license lookup, mailing address. A P.O. box. And the owner listed on the business license? Her maiden name. My spine went rigid. She wasn't just sabotaging my life. She was stealing from Dad's business. "What did you find?" he asked, voice a brittle thread. I told him. Everything. The payments, the shell company, the maiden name, the trail. Dad didn't speak for 10 full seconds, then, "Send everything to my lawyer." I did. That night, Dad's lawyer called her lawyer. Calm, professional, precise. "My client will be responding to the restraining order in court. Additionally, we have discovered evidence of long-term embezzlement totaling nearly $50,000. If your client would like to drop the restraining order request and negotiate reasonable divorce terms, this can remain a civil matter. If not, we will proceed with criminal charges." Her lawyer went silent. Then, in a voice thick with dread, he said, "Let me call my client." The hearing was 3 days later. Dad and I sat together in the courtroom, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My stomach churned in slow waves, anxiety mixed with adrenaline. My stepmother arrived wearing a pale pink blazer, hair curled, makeup soft and sympathetic. The perfect victim aesthetic. Her new lawyer, a cheaper one, less polished, kept whispering to her. She ignored him, scanning the room for an audience. But the judge didn't care about aesthetics. He cared about evidence. Dad's lawyer laid out everything. Then, the false police report she filed against me. The doorbell footage of her trying to break into the house. Her unhinged pounding on my apartment door. The email she sent to my employer. The recordings, her own voice admitting manipulation. The business records. The shell company. The $48,000 missing from the machine shop. By the time he finished, the judge's eyebrows were in the next galaxy. My stepmother's lawyer attempted a defense. Something vague about emotional misunderstanding. Something about overwhelmed caregiving. Something about misinterpretation. But the judge wasn't buying a single syllable. The court, the judge said slowly, is deeply concerned by your client's pattern of manipulation, harassment, and dishonesty. Her jaw dropped open. The request for a restraining order is denied. She shot up from her chair. Your Honor, he turned my son against me. He's isolating me. Ma'am, the judge said sharply, compose yourself. She did not. She kept screaming. You don't understand. They are lying. He's trying to steal my life. I gave everything. Ma'am. And now they want to throw me away like trash. Ma'am, another outburst, and I will hold you in contempt. He is abusing me. The judge banged the gavel. Contempt of court, $500 fine. Bailiff, escort her out. Her dramatic exit would have been comical if it hadn't been so tragic. Heels slipping on the linoleum, voice shrieking down the hallway. Her lawyer rubbing his temples like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Dad exhaled. I didn't, because this wasn't over. It was the beginning of her unraveling. That night, Dad's lawyer filed a formal police report for embezzlement. The detective assigned to the case said the evidence was clean, straightforward, and damning. Jonah called us, hesitant, exhausted. Mom's losing it, he said. She still insists none of this is her fault. She says you two are conspiring. She said I'm brainwashed. Are you okay? I asked. Yeah, but I'm done. I'm not talking to her until she apologizes. She won't, I murmured. I know. Then more softly. Dad, I'm sorry you had to see who she really is. Dad's voice cracked. Me too, son. As Jonah hung up, I stared out the window of Dad's truck, watching the courthouse lights fade behind us. The truth had finally been dragged out into the open. But light doesn't heal everything. Sometimes it just exposes how deep the cracks go. And the fallout wasn't finished. Not even close. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It unfolded slowly, like watching a structure collapse beam by beam after the fires already burned through the supports. Quiet, predictable, inevitable. The criminal investigation moved fast. Her shell company, Precision Consulting Services, was easy to trace. She'd been arrogant enough to register it under her maiden name, and her sister's name was right there on the joint bank account. 2 years, $48,000, all siphoned from Dad's machine shop under the guise of consulting. Her lawyer, her third lawyer, because the first two quit, told her she had no chance at trial. The evidence was airtight. So she took a plea deal. Probation, restitution, community service, no jail time. Dad didn't care about jail. He cared about the money and the truth. The restitution amount, $48,000, was deducted directly from what she would have been awarded in the divorce settlement. She walked away with about $45,000 and her car. Not the half the business windfall she'd envisioned. Her fury was volcanic, but legally impotent. Dad kept the house, the retirement accounts, the shop, everything he'd built. My stepmother ended up living with her sister in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment across town, a far cry from the curated home she used to micromanage. According to Jonah, who still spoke to her occasionally but with firm boundaries, she was bitter. Dangerous, bitter. Still telling everyone she'd been betrayed, still spinning herself as the victim of an ungrateful stepdaughter and a manipulative ex-husband. Zero accountability. A perfect loop. The day the divorce was finalized, Dad and I walked out of the courthouse into warm autumn sunlight. He took a long breath, hands on his hips, then looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on him before. Relief, sadness, and something like freedom. You okay, Dad? I asked. He blew out a breath. I will be. We were halfway across the parking lot when he said, I'm updating my will next week. I nodded. I already knew. 50-50 between you and Jonah, he said. Like I planned before all this mess. And I'm setting up a trust so she can never contest anything again. Ironclad. Good, I said softly. He smiled, a small, tired, grateful smile. You saved me, Rowan. I shook my head. No, we saved each other. Something in him broke open at that. He pulled me into a hug he hadn't given since I was 16. I let myself melt into it. For the first time in 12 years, the air between us felt honest. Family dinners changed after that. Jonah started coming over more, awkward at first, then warmer. He apologized again and again for his mother's actions until I finally said, Jonah, you are not responsible for her choices. He wiped his eyes and nodded. I know, I'm just angry and sad and embarrassed. Me too, I said. And we meant it. Without her in the house, without all the silent wedges she drove into every interaction, the three of us began to talk like we were building something new instead of tiptoeing through something broken. It was strange how quiet peace could be. Caleb, my boyfriend who'd fled the dinner disaster, texted me that same night. Not to get back in my life, not to apologize. Just, I'm still here. Take whatever time you need. None of this was your fault. I stared at that message for a long time. A month later, he met me for coffee. A month after that, he came to dinner with Dad and Jonah. 8 months later, we were still together. He once told me, your family story is the craziest thing I've ever heard, but it never made me afraid of you, only afraid for you. That stayed with me. Eventually, I started therapy. 12 years of manipulation doesn't dissolve just because the manipulator is removed. It leaves residue, sticky thought patterns, doubts, reflexive self-blame. I learned something I didn't like. After years of sabotage, I'd started sabotaging myself preemptively, picking fights, ending things early, convincing myself no one would stay anyway. If I pull away first, I told my therapist one session, then she can't ruin it. My therapist nodded gently. That's called adaptive survival. It protected you. But it's no longer serving you. I cried in that session. Big, messy, silent tears I didn't even realize were coming. Recovery isn't cinematic. It's small, quiet, repetitive, but real. I reached out to 2 of my exes, not to rekindle, just to apologize and explain. One appreciated it. One told me to lose her number. Both reactions were fair. Then, 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. The looping, performative cursive. My stepmother. I opened it with a shaky breath. The letter began with the performance of affection. How much I always loved you like my own. How devastated I've been by the misunderstanding. Then it softened, then begged. I lost everything. My marriage, my home, my security. I'm 59 and starting over with nothing. I'm asking you, person to person, if you could talk to your father about helping me. Just enough to get a small place. Please, I know you have a kind heart. I read it twice, then showed it to Dad. He didn't laugh out loud, more a sad, exasperated sigh. She still doesn't get it, he said. I went home that night and wrote back a single sentence. You didn't lose everything, you threw it away. I mailed it, no return address. I haven't heard from her since. I don't expect to. Is my story happy? Not in the neat, sweet fairy tale way. A family cracked in half. Jonah lost his relationship with his mom. Dad lost 12 years with someone he thought he could trust. I lost 12 years of my 20s to manipulation I didn't even realize was happening. But it is honest. And sometimes honesty is the only way forward. My stepmother faced consequences. Real ones, legal ones, financial ones, social ones. She lost the marriage, the comfort, the control she valued more than relationships. And me? I'm learning to trust again. Learning that not every relationship is doomed. Learning that I deserve better than 12 years of being treated like an obstacle. I'm rebuilding. Slowly, deliberately, and on my own terms. Most importantly, my future doesn't include her. Not in any capacity. Not ever again. And that is its own kind of closure.